Slide in the Woods is a mysterious indie game that came out a while ago, having really strong representation of the Mesoamerican regions, which involved human sacrifice in an attempt to nourish the ancient gods and deities. It's a game I played a while back, and ever since I wanted to make a video going over it and the possibilities of what the story is all about. The game begins with the protagonist finding himself or herself in the middle of an eerily empty woods with a playground slide located right in the middle. It's a very unlikely place to build something like this, even clearing out the trees and paving the ground, very clearly displaying whoever or how many ever people designed and created this place had specific set of goals. Unlikely to be intentions for creating a playground for kids, as it would be a hard to reach place for kids hidden in the middle of the woods. If anything, the slide seems to be a cover for something else the original creators wanted to hide, as we later find out, an entry point or a portal to a horrifying pocket dimension with deities or beings inspired by Mayan gods who require human sacrifices. As the game seems to be inspired by Mayan culture and gods, I think it's fitting to give the protagonist a popular Mayan name, Apo, which means the father of many nations, which despite its meaning, it's actually a unisex name. Our protagonist, who remains a mysterious character with no background story or how they even ended up here, decides to slide down the slide for some reason, even though fully aware this is a strange place for a slide. It even seems the protagonist specifically arrived here deliberately, as if aware or having a hunch of what the slide is capable of. So it's a possibility Apo is a curious teenager or even an adult who is investigating the slide. I will refer to the protagonist as a he from this point onward to make the script less confusing and to make writing and reading it easier. Keep in mind, this character could be a he, a she, or anything else, as we don't see him or have any background story. I particularly added this segment to the video because I know there will be people who will go down in the comments and complain why the protagonist is not a she or a they. As the protagonist, Apo, decides to slide down the slide, he notices how it feels off and not like any other slide he used before. Going up to try it once again, even though the last ride was uncomfortable, as soon as he reaches the ground, the environment around him drastically changes, becoming dimmer and gloomier. The birds chirping in the distance and other natural sounds such as the howling of the wind suddenly come to a stop, as if the world completely stopped, with Apo and the slide being the only existing and living creatures here, as if being in a mid-layer of reality and whatever else realm the slide connects to. Using the slide for a third time, the daytime changes to a different period, being completely pitch black as if the sun completely disappeared. This clearly shows that the slide is breaking the barrier between this world and another, with significant parts of this world slowly turning off, such as the wild animals disappearing, the wind, and the sun. The sun played an important role in the Mayan culture as they depended on agriculture for living and how their civilization was formed, which made them implement sun and agriculture into their religion, having deities associated to them, sacrificing humans, and even studying cosmology and astronomy to predict eclipses and weather changes. But we'll get back to this later in much more depth. Apo finds a flashlight appearing in the middle of this dark place, as if intricately placed there for travelers to navigate their way through the scary path. Using the flashlight and sliding down the slide once more, another item appears on top of the slide catwalk, which is of an old newspaper article entailing a large chunk of the backstory. The newspaper reporting on the local town of Oakfield entails information about the tragic disappearances of masses, including children and adults. A particular detective working on the case, after some investigation, mentions how all of his hard work was in vain, as it seems all the victims disappeared into thin air with no trace or lead whatsoever. This might be a hint to who the protagonist could be, being a detective who is investigating the disappearances, leading him to this mysterious slide in the middle of nowhere. In conclusion, it's a strong possibility the slide was made or designed by one singular individual or a group of people worshipping old deities, luring children in order to offer them as human sacrifice, hence why they built a slide, being a tempting tool for children. It turns out, of course, after doing some digging online and reading some articles, it was a common practice in the Mayan civilization to sacrifice children to the god of rain and fertile fields, Chak. by throwing them into pits and sinkholes in sacred caves known as cenotes, which served as the source of water and entrance to the underworld. This will play an important element uncovering the secrets of the story as we witness later in the game. Going through the slide a few more times, banging sounds are heard coming from the slide, which piques Oppo's curiosity. Going up yet again, but this time around, a trail of blood paves the stairs leading to the top of the slide. As he carefully walks up, he notices a bloodied and injured body wrapped in a cloth, banging their head against the catwalk's rails, as if in a state of shock. As soon as Oppo tries to help this unknown person, seemingly being one of the disappeared victims, a set of demonic hands pull the terrified injured person into the slide, which Oppo doesn't waste a second, jumping into the slide in order to save this person, dismissing the danger of what pulled this person as a small prey. This time around, the slide seems to get longer, leading to a stone-built slide, eventually to a tight tunnel. The tunnel then shifts into a steep slide, leading to a fog-covered environment with an overshadowing, jaw-dropping ancient pyramid. The slide's purpose is soon exposed as it acts as a sacrifice body delivery system or chute, being so steep that the only way is down, directly connected to the stepped pyramid. The pyramid and the entire environment seems to be set on a floating platform, with all ends of the platform falling into an infinite abyss. The scared yet driven Oppo, knowing the only way is up, climbs up the steps with the body wrapped in cloth being thrown down the steps, this time being lifeless and motionless. Magically, the body of this victim disappears at the bottom of the pyramid as if it fell into the abyss. This horrifying discovery runs shivers down Oppo's spine, seeing the close similarity of the scene to the stories of the rituals he read about the ancient Mesoamerican civilizations. Humans often were subject to sacrifice to the deities, being taken to the top of the pyramid, killed as an offering to the gods to fertilize the land and give them favors. And eventually, the lifeless bodies of the subjects would be thrown down the steps of the pyramids for the grand ceremony. Going up the pyramid, reaching the main temple, the stone sacrificial bit stands out with a pool of blood partially covering it, seemingly sourced from the poor victim who was not long ago thrown down the steps. Peculiar carvings on the stone walls of the chamber also reveal the ritualistic purposes of this entire pyramid. Going inside the temple, full of ancient carvings, a very prevalent pulsating item is chained atop a deep pit held in place. This thing that looks like a beating heart, yet seeming as if being a collection of alive bodies, is intended to be lowered into the pit in order to feed certain entities. Oppo, getting the gist of his responsibilities, does exactly that, using the meticulously designed mechanism for this type of ritual. As the bag is fully lowered down into the pit, loud unpleasant screams are heard momentarily before coming into an uncanny stop. Unsure what to do, Oppo hears steps of something approaching the temple when suddenly he sees a ghostly-faced large entity walking towards the temple, stopping at the gate before staring at the protagonist menacingly and then entering, walking towards him. Accordingly, a little entryway opens in the temple, leading to a slide which the protagonist takes as a means to escape this awakened hostile entity, who sets to chase after Oppo when all of a sudden, the stone-built slide leads to a plastic slide, reminiscent of the playground slide, which leads to the place in the middle of the woods. This time around, the slide completely disappears with no trace of it ever existing, with the traumatized protagonist left to tell an unbelievable story which no one will probably believe. Now let's go over the possibilities of what was going on, who the protagonist is, and what this pocket dimension world was. According to the newspaper we find, those could be a great hint that the protagonist is the mentioned brave detective investigating the peculiar disappearances of children and adults, leading him to this place. On a day that the slide and this part of the woods was clear, he goes on to investigate it, not finding anything particularly striking right off the bat, which makes him slide down the slide. Even using it for the first time, he feels something being off, which coincides with strange surreal occurrences of the world staying still, with sounds of the wind and birds even stopping. The time period even changes from a bright day to a dark stuffy night, but not any night. A pitch black place which is absent of any clouds, moon, or stars. The flashlight specifically placed there indicates people frequently use the slide, using the flashlight to navigate through the dark, not as victims but as navigators, who seem to be quite accustomed to this strange routine. This leads to an actually alive victim being seen, beaten and injured, subdued and wrapped in cloth to be offered to otherworldly entities, as seen through a set of monstrous arms reaching through the slide to take the offering, the human sacrifice. Going down the slide, the aftermath is seen, this victim being killed as a sacrifice atop a temple pyramid with their lifeless body then thrown down the steps. So far, it's clear the slide acts as a gateway to the surreal dimension of this entity or entities like it. Going down the slide, it progressively becomes less like Earth, as if going through layers between this realm to another. The other surreal realm, which seems to be a pocket dimension, a pyramid system resting on a floating platform in an infinite abyss covered in fog. It has out-of-this-world beings requiring nourishment and food, whether spiritual or physical. That is why the victim's body is killed then thrown down the steps, and the collection of bodies are lowered down into the pit, with a voice instructing Apo to feed them. You might ask, who's them, and how deep does the pyramid go? Well, for that, we need to read a little about the discovered parts of the Mayan culture, which definitely is not a thorough understanding of their culture. It could very likely also be misunderstood, but it is what we can work with for now. Mayans often use these pyramids as temples dedicated to their gods and deities, with the rain and land fertilization deity named Chak being the most prominent, who had the most human sacrifices. Priests of the Mayan culture use these pyramids to lower alive or kill children into the pits as offerings for rain and agricultural purposes, as it played an important role in their civilization. The darkness witnessed in between the worlds could also be a nod to the cosmological and astronomical expertise of the Mayans and how they could predict eclipses and changes in weathers, and even performing rituals which they thought could control those occurrences. The body wrapped in cloth clearly shows it of an adult, but the pulsating heart-shaped bag seemingly having several people inside could be the bodies of children who are lowered into the pit to feed them, in other words, the ancient deities. This perfectly correlates with the ancient practices of Mayans who offered the lives of children as sacrifices to the gods, putting them into scary dark pits and sinkholes, believing them to be source of their water and land fertilization. The other offerings being whether adults or children killed on the stone bed in front of the pyramid temple top had their lifeless bodies thrown down the pyramid in these ceremonies, with the purpose of the ritual being believed to nourish the gods, hence why in the temple the protagonist is instructed to feed the deities by lowering the pulsating bag, being bodies of victims yet beating like a heart, representing the removal of hearts in these ceremonies. The carvings on the walls of the temple also resembled those in actual temples of Mayans, depicting their gods and the sacrifices. Now, something that has been recently discovered in the last decade or two is that Mayans and other Mesoamerican civilizations often built pyramids on top of other more ancient pyramids, having deep pathways and temples which were left uncovered for centuries. The very tip of the iceberg we see here of the maze-like system of the pyramid in this game leads to many hidden chutes, pits, and pathways, with the main sacrificial pit seemingly directly leading the victim bodies into the more ancient temples, down to the core, to the demanding gods. Finally, the ghost-faced entity we see attacking the protagonist seems to be one of those deities demanding a human sacrifice. In conclusion, it appears that the slide was built by a group of ancient deities worshippers associated to Mesoamerican culture and deities in order to achieve riches or other means of enrichment or powers. The multiple disappearances of children and adults are directly linked to the slide in the middle of the woods, disguising the true use of it being a gateway or portal to this pocket dimension of other deities. It is built to lure children and throw other victims into, directly leading to an intricate chute system to the pyramid so that deities could be nourished, providing the kidnappers and perpetrators who worship these deities with what they wish for. Alright folks, that's about it for this video. I know it's about a very old game, but it's something that I really wanted to do, and it would be great if you also put down your opinions down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, you can stay tuned by hitting on the subscribe button and the notification bell. It's been your host Star, and I will catch you on the next video. Have a fantastic day.